What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a new offensive coordinator, and the reviews are mixed, but, the only opinions that matter come from the city of Atlanta, and we made sure to get our insight from down south. Falcons beat, Falcons stadium, Falcons facility, whatever you want to call it. We got the inside knowledge. On top of that, some quarterback talk, and maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers might be still in on Kenny Pickett, but how short is that leash, and is there another veteran option that they could bring in here with some ties to Arthur Smith? We're going to dive into that. It is a beautiful day here in the Berg. It's been a beautiful 24 hours, even if it's a little chilly, but it is just about February, so can't expect anything less. How you feeling, my friend?
I feel great. I was really excited when I saw the white smoke coming up from the practice facility in Southside to indicate that the Steelers had picked a new offensive coordinator. It was very encouraging, exciting moment down here. But it's been an interesting 24 hours. No matter how you look at Arthur Smith, everyone has opinions on it. That's the fun part about covering the Pittsburgh Steelers. No matter what, people have opinions.
No matter what. And I think the opinions they were all over the board. I had somebody yesterday who tweeted at me and they were like, Noah, they could have had Josh McDaniels. I was like, I didn't even know Josh McDaniels. We haven't even talked about Josh McDaniels. That name hasn't even been mentioned in the NFL. Toss that one out there. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got, are they all in? Are they not all in? Are they only looking at Atlanta? Are they looking at his time in Tennessee? Everybody's got their layout of what they believe Arthur Smith is. And I think, to be totally honest, we're part of the problem here because we were starting to hype up Clint Kubiak and, oh, man, this could happen, and you never know. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers do what the Pittsburgh Steelers do, and they found the guy that fits exactly what they're looking for. And don't get me wrong, it could have been a lot worse. You could have went out and got, again, a Byron Leftwich or a Pep Hamilton or somebody who just barely fits the mold of a good offensive coordinator. Instead, they went out and found a guy that has had a lot of success playing that position in the NFL and having that role in the NFL. And, we'll dive into that. We do have an interview with our boy Daniel Flick down south in Atlanta to give us all the insight on how that team views Arthur Smith, what the Pittsburgh Steelers are getting, and maybe clear up some stuff, some negative notions about Arthur Smith that have been floating around there amongst Steelers fans. You heard the news yesterday. You saw all the opinions, but what was your opinion when the Pittsburgh Steelers hired, or I guess are still expected to hire, Arthur Smith?
Yeah, I was a little underwhelmed, to be quite honest with you. Like, I don't want to do any revisionist history because, we talked to Daniel, and I think a lot of the concerns I had, he was able to alleviate, but I was a little underwhelmed. I think I had an impression of Arthur Smith as, from an outside perspective, as somebody who just kind of fumbled a chance in Atlanta, had a chance to really work with a lot of great playmakers and just never seemed to get the most out of all those guys. I thought it was a safe hire. I thought it was a quick hire. I thought the Steelers were afraid more of losing a guy than they were of getting the guy that they wanted. And I was just underwhelmed in general. But I think the more you look into it, and the more, after we talked to Danny, I feel like, and I don't want to give away too much of that interview because it was really great and Daniel gave some great insight, but I think a lot of the stuff I was worried about, quarterback development, his use of playmakers, his inconsistent use of playmakers, and just kind of how he would fit to the Steelers personnel. I was concerned about that, but I think maybe it's not something that we need to be concerned about as much. I believe it was Art Rooney who said as well that, they want someone who's going to fit to this personnel. You can't flip an entire roster in an off season, even just on the offensive side of the ball. So you need someone who's kind of tailored to fit what you guys do, what your personnel is good at. And I think you can see from Arthur Smith's track record in Tennessee, and again, that's a big question, who are you getting? You're getting the Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator from a few years ago, you're getting the Falcons head coach, but you've seen on his track record that he knows how to knows how to get guys involved. He knows how to get good running backs involved. He knows how to get the most out of tight ends, which Steelers have a million of. And I think the biggest question is the quarterback development. And I think that's the thing I'm eager to see, eager to hear what Arthur Smith has to say moving forward. But I think a lot of my concern, I'm not as concerned as it was when he first got hired, but it still feel like there are a lot of question marks.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up Art Rooney, because I even said it in my to go yesterday. It was all about how I knew who the Steelers were going to hire as soon as I left there. I kind of wish that they just told us in the moment, because as soon as it was over, I'm talking to Alan Saunders of Pittsburgh Sports Now, and we're both like, so they're going to hire Arthur Smith, right? Like, that's exactly what he just told us. You knew it. You knew as soon as they were looking for the right personnel and they have a vision for the offense and so on and so forth. Because at the same time, you have to look at it one of two ways. The Steelers are looking to win right now, and they understand that they don't have their franchise quarterback, or at least they're not certain that they have their franchise quarterback. So how are they going to win? They're going to win through the ground. They're going to win with their weapons. They're going to win by being a gritty football team and through their defense. And you got to get somebody who could execute that. They wanted it to be Matt Canada, who could be the guy who could come in here and develop a quarterback and create the next franchise Big Ben and so on and so forth. Didn't work out. So to a degree, it's a safe call, but it also makes a lot of sense for what they're looking for right now, to win right now. It might not be a long-term thing. It might not be the best offensive coordinator to find the next CJ Stroud or Bryce Young or whoever, but it's a guy that is going to take Najee Harris, is going to take Jaylen Warren, and be able to utilize them in a manner that the Steelers have been looking to utilize them with, and form an offense that revolves around play action and getting the quarterback to, I don't know, just have an easier game in front of him. And I think that's what the Steelers were looking for. I knew it as soon as I left there, and I started to kind of cope with it. And I started to realize, like, look at it. I don't think it's shooting for the stars, but I also have been told by multiple sources that this guy had not one, but multiple offers in front of him when he took the Steelers job. So there's something there. There's obviously, we all are going to nitpick the negative and say, hey, look at this is it. But if you wanted them to shoot for the stars and shoot for somebody who was a hot name in the NFL, he was a hot name in the NFL. People wanted him to be their offensive coordinator. The Steelers were like, look, let's just make that our offensive coordinator. I don't think it's their best option. I don't think it was their best hire. I think you could have went and got anybody from San Francisco and it would have been 10 times better. But for the pool of guys that are floating around right now to not wait, I think it's like guys are going to end up with, Antoine Randall is a great coach, but he's out there getting floated around as an offensive coordinator. Byron Leftwich was a name that people were talking about. Pep Hamilton was a name that people were talking about. Like, you get all these guys. Gerard Johnson came in for an interview, and he ended up being a quarterbacks coach in Houston still. Like, you could have settled for much worse than Arthur Smith, and I think that at least, you should kind of take that as a positive, where they didn't make the biggest splash, but it was still a splash. And if you're a Steelers fan looking for something, take the whole body of work and also have an understanding that an offensive coordinator job and a head coaching job, we've said this multiple times, two totally different jobs, two totally different responsibilities. And you could do a lot more as an offensive coordinator than head coach and have that success with it. To dive into this more, we got our boy Daniel Flick down in Atlanta to bring all the insight. Speaking of Arthur Smith and his impact with the Pittsburgh Steelers, have your opinion, say what you want. It's always good to get an inside look, and that's what we're here to do. We're bringing in our boy, one of the hardest workers in the industry, the next up-and-comer, if you ask me, down in Atlanta, Daniel Flick, beat reporter for the Atlanta Falcons, SI Falcon Report. Daniel, great to have you on. Love that you're bringing the energy. And let's hear a little bit about Arthur Smith. How you feeling, my friend?
No, I am thrilled to be here. I think it's my second appearance on the podcast. The
It
first
is.
one, Jalen Carter talk last April, I believe.
True.
Lot has changed in that time. Yeah, Arthur Smith talk. My first thought when I saw the news is, wow, what a great day for Najee Harris, right? What a great day for Najee Harris. You think about Arthur Smith, you think about a guy committed to running the football. Sometimes a little bit too committed, you could argue. But again, the thing about Arthur's tenure that a lot of people missed in Atlanta, year one, Matt Ryan's there. The way that they ran that offense, completely different from the 2 years after that, when you have so much quarterback uncertainty. Well, not really uncertainty, just incompetence, frankly, with Mariota and Ritter and Heineke, and three guys who should not be week one starting quarterbacks next fall. That was a roadblock, but you could see the offensive potential that Arthur's Arthur's scheme, the flexibility within it to where if you've got to be pass heavy, you can be pass heavy. If you've got to be run heavy, you can be run heavy. He can kind of work with that personnel however he needs to kind of maneuver it, if you will. And I think that's something that in Pittsburgh, with the personnel that's there, I'll be curious to see how Deontay Johnson works out there. Because Calvin Ridley, not the same player, but in my personal assessment, kind of more of a finesse, route running specialist, high level separator. Calvin was not a big fan of Arthur Smith's offense. Very middle of the field heavy, very physically demanding on receivers. That was not great for that style. I'll be curious how Deontay feels about that this fall. But I think from an overall perspective of what I know about Mike Tomlin, what I know about how the Steelers play football, Arthur Smith, smash mouth individual, should be a strong fit in Pittsburgh.
So you say running the football, you can never run the football enough. I mean, you tell a Pittsburgh Steelers fan that. You tell anybody in Pittsburgh that's the dream right there, is run the damn football. They're all into that. But people have a bit of a, I want to say, negative connotation on how he utilized Bijan Robinson last season. And so, I mean, you look at his numbers, he's a 1,400 all-purpose yard guy last year. I think that speaks a little, some volume for him. But people weren't totally sold on that. What was it as bad as it looked on the outside, maybe, with how he utilized that type of runner?
No, if I told you that 1,400 yards from scrimmage you mentioned was a Falcons rookie record, would you say that was poor usage from Arthur Smith?
No, I would not.
I would not either. Now, I think the most alarming part, not alarming, but more so concerning or frustrating part of it, is they talked so much after they drafted Robinson last April about playing him in the slot, playing him, moving him all over the formation. That didn't really happen. There were times where his role fluctuated. I think the problem that Arthur ran into frequently in Atlanta was he had so many weapons and he just consistently struggled blending and mixing and matching to where you're equally balancing the touches for each target. You know, you'd have a game where you have London with 7 catches for 130 yards and he'd come back the next week with 1 catch for 9 yards. And it's like, how does this happen? You know, that can't happen. Kyle Pitts, everybody knows all the struggles that he's had since that rookie year. It's kind of a similar deal with Bijan, in my personal opinion, to where the role just fluctuated so much and how they used him. And it really just shouldn't have, because you know what he's good at. You know he's special with the ball in his hands. And it just, you know, there were too many times where he just felt removed from what they were trying to do. And I think that Arthur internally really struggled kind of juggling the amount of playmakers that he had last year. And I think you kind of saw Robinson's numbers at times, and I'd say on a week-to-week basis, weren't what you would think they would be, but the cumulative number ended up being just fine to where I wouldn't be overly concerned about that.
Yeah, and I mean, this wasn't really an issue when he was offensive coordinator for the Titans. It's one of the things that drew him to Atlanta. But, you know, who do you think the Steelers are going to get? I mean, it seems like there are 2 versions of Arthur Smith. There's Arthur Smith, the head coach, and then there's Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator, which is kind of the truer version, I think, in your mind, of who this guy is and who are the Steelers getting.
Yeah, Arthur Smith, the head coach, drew a lot of criticism for the way that he managed games at times, and I think he just reached a point where he had too much on his plate, and I think the offensive coordinator role is just a little bit better suited for him. The one thing about him that I will say as a head coach, phenomenal culture builder. Locker room loved him all the way till the very end. Locker room after week 18 was still very supportive of him. He will not have a hard time fitting in that locker room. He will not have a hard time earning respect. A lot of people look at him as like, hey, he's the son of the guy that runs FedEx, you know, but he could be doing anything that he wants to do right now, and he's the offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's going to win him a lot of support in that locker room. I think in terms of what version of Arthur Smith you're getting, I think it is the offensive coordinator. I think it's the guy that had a lot of success in Tennessee, not the guy whose offense failed to score 30 points this past year. That's the guy who had rough quarterback play, who put himself in that position from trying to manage everything else around it and balancing everything, and I think overbalancing to the point where he just couldn't really handle it all. And you know what? That's fine. He's a 42-year-old who was in his first head coaching stint, still a promising young offensive mind.
So you bring up the quarterback play. You say that it's incompetent, I guess. The Steelers are looking for a quarterback, or at least a solution at quarterback. Was it just that Tyler Heineke and Desmond Ridder were that bad, or should you be concerned? And can he, was there any light there to say maybe he could build a quarterback, kind of take that next step, or help Kenny Pickett take that next step?
Yeah, there were times in Atlanta where Ridder looked like he was so close to finding that consistency and finding that next level. And then as that would happen, he'd have a 3-interception game and just all the progress just be thrown out the window. The interesting thing about Arthur, when he was in Tennessee, the work that he did kind of reinvigorating Ryan Tannehill's career earned him so much praise there and kind of helped him build that reputation of being really good with quarterbacks. To the point where I think they thought they could work a little bit of magic with Ridder. You draft him in round 3 in an underwhelming quarterback draft class as is. And I think they just kind of thought there was something there, that wasn't. I still think Arthur, on the surface, again, kind of a unique background, right? Not a quarterback's coach. A lot of these young offensive minds you see nowadays are working hands-on with QBs. No, he was an offensive lineman in college at UNC, spent the entirety of his time in Tennessee, assistant tight ends coach and full-time tight ends coach. Very, again, smash mouth, physical individual. With the quarterback position, you're going to find that he'll be pursuing guys. He loves that play action game. Having quick eyes is very important for him. That middle of the field accuracy is important. There were times I was there in Atlanta. There were also times where conceptually they struggled. I thought sometimes the spacing within his route concepts was not there. That was something that he came under fire for pretty frequently. Actually, was just there were various concepts he used that just were not great in terms of how he was utilizing the players he was utilizing, where they were at, and just, things of that nature to where it just wasn't great. But I still think that his offense, while not overly quarterback friendly, has been proven in the past to be helpful and can, in the right circumstance with the right young quarterback, lead to positive growth.
Yeah, do you put, I guess, more of was Desmond Ridder kind of doomed from the start? I mean, was he just not good enough? You mentioned that he and Mariota and Tyler Heineke, these guys just aren't week 1 starters. Was it really the talent holding him back, or do you worry at all about how Arthur Smith kind of develops quarterbacks? Because his success with Ryan Tannehill, that was a guy who had been in the league for a few years already and it had some experience under his belt.
Yeah, I don't think development should be a huge concern with Arthur Smith. Ridder took a positive step. I think you just reach a point with him where he is what he is. Ridder, the quarterback that played the last 4 games of last year, was very different from the quarterback that played the first 7.5 weeks of this year before he entered, I think it was concussion protocol at halftime against Tennessee, and then everything just broke loose after that. But the quarterback that played this year, you could see there was a level of confidence that wasn't there last year. His numbers were up. There was a 3-week stretch where he was second in the NFL in passing yards behind Patrick Mahomes, averaging just under 300 yards a game. The production within the passing offense under Arthur Smith was proven to be there. And I think if you're a Steelers fan, that's what should really encourage you, is that when Arthur had Matt Ryan, that offense could really attack teams aerially. This year, at times, in 2022, they were so run heavy. They led the NFL in rushing attempts, and they had the 3rd best rushing offense. This year, they tried to be more balanced. They didn't really have the quarterback for it, but there were still weeks where they were throwing for 300 yards a game. Arthur had a 3-week stretch this year where that offense had 400-plus yards every game for the first time since 2018 over that time span. There were times when that offense looked really good, and really it all depended on QB play. And again, I don't think that the talent that he had at that position was enough for what he needed. And I think that now that you move him away from that head coaching, that executive CEO role of and all the head coach responsibilities, that you'll kind of be able to see that offense take off a little bit more.
So last one I got here for you. It's kind of a two-parter. Kyle Pitts, Drake London had the games, obviously, but also didn't have games. Explain to me what was wrong with. I mean, Kyle Pitts should have been the greatest thing to ever touch the field tight end wise. The Steelers have a tight end in Pat Freiermuth that is hoping to take another step. What went on there? What was the problem there?
Yeah, this year in particular, Pitts was not healthy. That's something that a lot of people have missed, I think, nationally. Obviously, he had that torn MCL last season and then came back this year. They kind of played it slow in camp, and then by the time the year started, he still wasn't 100%. And by the time of the year that he would have been 100%, he'd already been hit enough to where he was no longer capable of being 100%. And then he had his first child mid-season, and there's a lot of moving parts to that situation to where he just physically was not at his highest capabilities. There were still games, as you mentioned, where he was particularly good. Jonnu Smith has, for whatever reason, flourished under Arthur Smith wherever he's gone. You think about the big contract that he got in New England.
I was going to say, he was a baller in Tennessee.
Yeah, baller in Tennessee, went to New England, fell off the face of the earth, came back to Atlanta. There was a point this year he led the Falcons in receiving, which that might not be the most glowing endorsement of an Arthur Smith offense. But still, if you're Pat Freiermuth, I personally think that any tight end and running back on Pittsburgh's roster should be thrilled. Arthur historically has utilized tight ends at a very high level. Michael Pruitt led the Falcons, or was tied for the lead in touchdowns last year on the Falcons with 4, I believe, in 2022. Not exactly a name you would think of as being up there, but again, Arthur, for all the criticism that his red zone stuff came under, and again, rightfully so at times, which was confusing because he was really good in that regard in Tennessee, but he still found ways to involve various players in the red zone. I think some of the inconsistency, again, this year was more down to health for Pitts. Last year, I think you look at quarterback play. 2021 with Pitts, I believe he had the second most receiving yards by a rookie tight end in league history. Broke the 1,000-yard receiving mark with Matt Ryan.
You couldn't tell somebody in Pittsburgh that. They would have no idea.
Yeah. Like Pitts, a lot of people miss that. A lot of people miss that Pitts as a rookie set the franchise rookie record for receptions. And then again, like I said, had the second most receiving yards from rookie tight end in league history. And then you have London come in the year after that and break Pitt's record for receptions from a rookie. He had 868 yards as a rookie and was, I believe, close to 900 this year, may have eclipsed 900. You look at Robinson setting a franchise record for yards from scrimmage from a rookie. Last year, Algier broke the rookie rushing record. They found various ways to utilize all of these guys in their own respective ways to where a lot of people miss that concept nationally because, as you mentioned, the individual games from a week-to-week basis kind of varied, but cumulatively they all produced at a pretty good level, other than Pitts, which, again, I put on quite a bit of injuries for this past year.
So you're telling me that the Steelers should just continue to draft one offensive key piece every year because that guy's going to ball out. And then if you're playing fantasy football, that's the guy you're taking a shot on. I got it.
Yeah, at least in their rookie year, because apparently the national narrative is year 2, year 3, they're falling off the face of the earth. When healthy, they're not falling off the face of the earth. But nice. If you're Pittsburgh, just keep on drafting them.
Keep on drafting. Steven, you got one more for him?
No, that was all I had.
All right, last thing we got for you before we let you go. Arthur Smith with the mustache, Arthur Smith without the mustache. Who's the better coach? What one would you prefer?
Yeah, the mustache to me, we're kind of talking about this off air. The mustache is such a power play.
Agreed.
It's really just a character tie that I have with Arthur, and I feel like you get rid of the mustache, you kind of lose some of that character. So if I'm a Steelers fan, I'm hoping Arthur Smith shows up to that introductory press conference rocking the mustache. That's just me, though. That's just me.
I hope so, too. I hope I walk up there and I go, oh, there it is. There it is, in all its glory. Daniel, can't thank you enough. We appreciate it. I think you definitely boosted the morale of a lot of Steelers fans with this one, and they desperately needed it after the last 24 hours. Make sure to go check out Daniel's work at si.com/NFL/Falcons, falconsreport.com. I would believe it fall under as well. Anything else you want to plug for us?
Twitter at by Daniel Flick. We should have a lot of new content coming in. In case you guys weren't aware, Falcons just hired a new head coach a week ago. Who knew? Yeah,
Who
a
knew?
lot of new content coming there. A lot of exciting content. Some exclusive pieces coming on that. And yeah, appreciate you guys having me on, and hope to be of your service or potentially sleeping on your couch in Indianapolis.
Yeah, Indianapolis is going to be a good time. We'll make sure that we got plenty of YouTube comment of Daniel passing out on the red couch in the living room. Very excited for that one. All right, brother, can't thank you enough. Enjoy, and we will see you in Indianapolis.
Appreciate you.
Guys, we have gear, new merchandise from AST to Mooth, Bleed Black and Gold, Kenny to George, and plenty of others now at our new website, blackandgoldapparel.com. And the coolest part, 50% of all profits at our store go to UPMC Children's Hospital here in Pittsburgh to make sure that we are giving back. We can't thank you guys enough, and we want to show you guys how thankful and how grateful we are for everything by making sure that we do our part to make the community here in Pittsburgh better. Go check out everything. We tried to make everything new and improved, from our designs to our quality of sweatshirts and t-shirts and everything else. Let us know and check everything out at blackandgoldapparel.com. And as always, thank you guys for everything. So I won't lie to you, going into that interview and even going into this entire day was, okay, mediocre, mild, small splash, still a splash. I think we both agreed leaving that one a little bit more optimistic about where the Pittsburgh Steelers stand. What was your biggest takeaway talking to Daniel? Has your mind changed since, 10 minutes ago and right now?
I mean, a little bit. Yeah, it has. I mean, Daniel has an impression of Arthur Smith's time in Atlanta that is much more positive than mine was.
Yes.
Which is just a little striking sitting on the outside, having been a Bijan Robinson fantasy owner.
Yes.
It's just, that was not what I really expected him to say. I expected him to have all this negative stuff to say about how he managed all the talent on that offense. But I mean, they seem optimistic about what Arthur Smith, the play caller, was able to do.
Yes.
And that there were a bunch of extenuating circumstances that held that offense back, but they were but they overachieved for the better part of Arthur Smith's year. I think that was the most surprising part, was that even as a guy who, as Daniel said, maybe had too much on his plate, he still managed a decent football team. He managed a team that, especially this past year, was in playoff contention for most of the year. Like, it apparently wasn't as grim down in Atlanta as we might have thought that it was. And I think that was the most surprising thing to hear from Daniel for me.
Yeah, I agree. I was expecting, I expected a high attitude, still have a lot of respect for the guy because, I was mentioned, it was actually Daniel who texted me immediately after the hire, and he said, look, you guys are going to love this guy. He's super high character, a lot of respect in Atlanta. I went, all right, like that's big. And I think that plays a role, but I also expected it to be like, he was really respected. He couldn't get the job done. Mike Sullivan, super respected, couldn't get the job done. Eddie Faulkner, super respected, couldn't get the job done. I mean, I was around for Keith Butler and Randy Fichtner. Like, those guys, you want to talk about love. Everybody in that organization loved that. They still walk in the building. Sometimes Butts comes in for lunch, and like every single person in that building is like, Keith, what's good, man? Like, going up, giving them hugs, shaking hands. Respected, couldn't get the job done. And I think that's what I expected. Leaving there a bit more optimistic. Didn't realize that there was some success and also reasons why things didn't work out. I'm also glad to hear that I had a very small bar for Desmond Ridder. I didn't think he was the quarterback. I also thought, I kind of thought that to a degree he was an issue there and you can only do so much. Good to know that, for one, he actually did have a bit of success, which was good. Two, sometimes it is the quarterback that is the biggest issue for a team, and to not have a quarterback and to not be able to even have an option, I think is also promising for a play caller to say, okay, well, maybe I'm going into a better situation. Do you think that Kenny's got a shot here, or you think Arthur Smith is more of a safe, we're going to win because Najee and Jalen are going to dominate, than Kenny now has an opportunity to turn into the guy because that's what Arthur Smith could turn him into?
Well, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. I think that you can have a strong running game and Kenny can find some success as a passer. and is an orchestrator of the offense. I feel like that's the bigger key there is, can Kenny, like, I don't even want to say be a game manager, but can he get them into the right plays? Can he make sure that the run game doesn't stay stale, that he can read a defense before a snap better than that? And that's all on top of being a better passer too. I think there's room for him to lead a good rushing attack that also like kind of complements a downfield passing game off of play action. Like, that's all possible. So I don't think just because they're going to run the ball a lot that Kenny's career's over. Because that's the reality. Like, it's any quarterback they bring in is going to want to run the ball a lot. And I think you've seen other teams have a ton of success running the ball first and then playing off of that run. So I think just because the Steelers they are almost certainly going to play to their strength, and their strength is running the football. I don't think that necessarily dooms Kenny. Still a big year from him, and he still has a lot to prove, and I think he'll get the opportunities to prove that or not.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it almost helps out Kenny to kind of ease his plate. And I mean, look at, dude, you have a successful offense, you have a successful game plan, you run play action where it actually works and does something. I mean, I was going back through because I was talking to Nick Martin last night. We were doing the live stream, and he brought up how many times the Steelers ran play action and then threw a pass to the flat. And I was like, there's no way. And you could actually Google it. You could Google Steelers run play action and throw it to the flat. And there's a whole YouTube clip of like just time and time again where it's just play action, throw it out to whoever, Connor Hayward or Pat Freiermuth or Deontay Johnson's screen or something. And you're like, well, that is the complete opposite of what you're trying to do with play action. So you have a competent play caller. I think that does help. There is other quarterback news that comes with Arthur Smith. I think a lot of people are talking about and immediately started talking about, hey, maybe the guy that he turned into the comeback player of the year, maybe the guy that he landed a 4-year, $100 million deal for, maybe the guy who earned his first Pro Bowl and helped take the Titans to the AFC Championship, which was at the time the beginning of the Kansas City Chiefs run, but you were still, I mean, they were the Detroit Lions. They were the America is rooting for the Tennessee Titans this season in that playoff run. Ryan Tannehill could be an option, isn't going to stick around in Tennessee. You look at Tannehill as a real maybe backup plan to Mason Rudolph not signing with the Steelers right now?
I think he's an option. I think I'm a little concerned about the idea of bringing in the one quarterback that Arthur Smith has really had success with. That feels like small thinking right there. That just feels, and that concerns me about what, I don't know, to bring in Ryan Tannehill would give me concerns about what they make of Arthur Smith's ability to develop a quarterback.
Okay.
Because then you're just bringing in the guy who already worked. You're bringing in the guy who Arthur Smith has already worked with, already made successful, and it just seems like limited small thinking to say, well, let's just bring him in again. It'll be just as successful as it was in Tennessee. I don't think Ryan Tannehill is necessarily bad, but I don't know. I feel like the Steelers have good quarterback options in house. And if you're going to sign a Ryan Tannehill, why would you not, maybe pursue Mason Rudolph a little bit heavier? I don't think there's a world where, I don't know, Ryan Tannehill costs them that much more, or Mason Rudolph costs him that much more money than Ryan Tannehill.
I think his market value right now is like $4 million.
Ryan Tannehill? That's it?
Yeah, it's Spotrac. Yeah, because I wrote that piece this morning. I think it was $4.6 million for 1 year. He's 35, so he's up there in age. You got to look at it like that. I mean, but Jacoby Brissett, Jacoby was like, what, 11 mil or something last year? We looked it up, and he's 31, so that's not that big of a gap. But I was surprised too. $4 million. It was like 4.6 or something, 4.9.
I guess that changed my attitude a little bit, but I don't know if I'm bringing in Ryan Tannehill to be a real serious contender for a starting job. Like, I think at best he's your backup. Like, I think even if you bring him in with Kenny Pickett, I feel like I would bank more on Kenny than I would on Ryan Tannehill revitalizing his career for a second time.
I agree. Second time is tough. Yeah.
Right. Like, you done it once. I get it. That's awesome. I'm really unsure about being able to do it a second time.
Nah, I don't think you're doing it a second time. Not long enough, not big enough that the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking for. Let me toss out another name for you, because Arthur Moats, former Steelers linebacker, said Sam Darnold. And you're talking about building a career or, growing a quarterback, whatever, developing a quarterback. That kid's only 26 years old. Didn't realize he was only 26 years old. Maybe a different version of Mason Rudolph. Maybe another. Well, you never know what you're going to get with the veteran guy. Because I just have a hard time believing that the Steelers are going to draft a quarterback early enough to make something a serious competition. And I still think they should draft a quarterback in maybe the 3rd or 4th round. But you need somebody for competition right now. Just speaking hypothetically, Mason goes elsewhere. Is that a type of quarterback that you're saying, oh, well, you could still technically kind of develop this guy?
Yeah, I think so. That could work. I would love for Sam Darnold to revitalize his career because I was a huge Sam Darnold guy when he was coming out of school.
Yes.
Didn't work out. But I still like Sam Darnold. I'm not very sure that like there's much left there, quite honestly. Like I
did see his one game because I was actually writing this one yesterday. His one game, I don't know what his completion percentage was, but he threw for like 297 yards and 2 touchdowns and an interception with San Francisco. And I was like, oh, look at Sam. That they lost. That's that's a very key component to things. But I was like, oh, look at Sam doing things. Coming out. He is 26-35 all time as a starter, which is not good. But again, dude, he is only 26 years old, so
that feels like another. Just like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that just feels like another fringe backup guy. Like, that doesn't excite you at all. And if you make it move, like, fine, but like, I'm not expecting him to make any kind of impact on the Steelers.
Yeah.
Now,
would you go him or Jacoby Brissett? I feel like I might lean Sam Darnold in that situation. Because Jacoby Brissett's been tossed out all the time by everybody.
Yeah,
that's the guy. And I'm like, is he excited?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think you're looking for 2 different things if you're bringing in those, one of those 2 guys. I think Brissett is more of this guy's starter capable. Darnold, you're kind of throwing something at a dartboard. Like you're guessing a little bit, and you're maybe banking on some better development. But Darnold is more of a backup. Like I feel like Brissett is more serious competition, and Darnold's insurance. So I think they're just. I don't know. To that extent, I think I'm looking at more at. I don't know. Assuming that you don't get Mason Rudolph back, I feel like you need Brissett in that situation. I don't think you need another I don't think you need another quarterback that you can develop or something. Like I'd want someone who keeps the floor pretty high.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett and Sam Darnold, and you're just like, all right, Super Bowl bound Pittsburgh Steelers. That's the last thing I got for you here is Kenny Pickett. You still looking at him as like you got the OC. You look at you look at a Gerard Johnson, and we're talking about does he develop Kenny Pickett? Is he this guy? You're looking at a Clint Kubiak. It's like, oh, he's gonna develop this guy. This is fine. They went Arthur Smith. Are you looking at it more now as like, okay, maybe they don't have total faith that Kenny is the guy? You think this was a step forward or a step backwards for Kenny Pickett?
I don't think this really changed how I view Kenny Pickett at all.
Okay.
Look, like I think they were pretty clear, both Art Rooney and Mike Tomlin in their kind of last press conferences of the year, that Kenny has to prove it. Kenny has to earn it. And that's gonna be a long process. I think they gave him that QB1 designation, but I don't know how real that is. Like how much does that matter when it's pretty clear that he's going into an open competition this summer in training camp. So I still view it that way, that like Kenny's not going to be handed anything. Like if they played a game tomorrow, he might be the starter, but they aren't. They're going to get an entire preseason. They're going to get some preseason games. He's going to have to play well, and he's going to have to prove that he's taken those steps forward. I don't think, that there's any kind of guarantees about where Kenny's kind of order or what they kind of think of Kenny right now. I think he's still like, it's kind of a clean slate or a fresh start for him. Like he's kind of starting from scratch, and he's going to have to, I think, work his way back into kind of cementing himself at that starter spot.
Yeah, I said this morning that I think his leash is so short right now. I don't even think he has one. Like I think he walks into OTAs, assuming Mason isn't around, and he's the QB1. But if he doesn't look good during OTAs, you got a new QB1. If he doesn't look good during training camp, you got a new QB1 by the start of the season. I think the Steelers, they know that they have to give him an opportunity, but they're not sold that he's going to take advantage of that opportunity, and they're going to make sure they have a backup plan no matter what that is, or they're going to go get a backup plan. I think that's a real possibility. If they do not look good, if Kenny doesn't look good come the end of July, and you're in training camp, I think you could actually start making phone calls for a quarterback and say, hey, look is this guy available? Is this guy available? Is whoever available? I mean, there's names out there. Go get it. And I don't think Trey Lance is that guy, and I don't know if he'll ever be that guy, but he's got some upside, and I think that they call, and whoever's available that they believe could be real competition, they'll go out and get. So I agree. I think the Arthur Smith thing kind of, in my opinion, just shortened the leash just because they got their guy. They got a guy that they believe could turn this offense into something big, and they took that step forward. This wasn't a developing offensive coordinator. This is a bona fide winner at offensive coordinator. This guy knows what he's doing. We have all the pieces together. Art Rooney made it clear as day that everybody else on that offense is very capable once they have an actual quarterback, And if you think you got those pieces, you're gonna go out and you're gonna try to solidify that one. So I agree. I don't think it took a step forward, but I do think that I think it kind of heightened the sense of urgency that they keep talking about to get this done. And if Kenny ain't the guy, they're gonna get the guy. And maybe that guy's Jacoby Brissett, maybe that guy's Mason Rudolph, maybe that guy is Ryan Tannehill. I don't know. Who knows? But they'll have their guy by the end of the season, and I wouldn't bank on it being Kenny Pickett until he proves anything. I think that's where we stand. I hope that this podcast kind of, brought a smile to some people's faces and said, all right, maybe things aren't as bad as we thought they'd be. And then there's a long offseason ahead, and I would expect the offense to get a little bit more juiced up and for them to solve the quarterback issue and so on and so forth. But for right now, they got a new offensive coordinator, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are marching forward. And maybe Clint Kubiak doesn't go anywhere. Maybe Clint Kubiak stays in San Francisco for another year, and Arthur Smith gets a head coaching job next year, and we're back here again. Who knows? With that, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcast. And as always, find all of our work at allsteelers.com and our pit coverage at InsideThePanthers.com. We will be back on Friday. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.